Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 142. 1 year old. Gajejet, Manman clapped his small hands and laughed until his saliva flowed out. Yuan suspiciously stared at his Lao Dai who was down on the floor. Is it a new play? Lei Tie calmly got up from the floor, let the two little ones lie down properly and swayed the crib to coax them to sleep. Qin Mian ran over and carried one baby in each hand. Then, he put the two little ones in the middle of the big bed and lay down on the left side of the bed. Lei Tie stood still for a short period before shaking his head. He took out new nightclothes from the wardrobe to put on his wife but was robbed of that. Lei Tie self-consciously lay on the right side of the bed. As he recollected the pleasant feeling of his wife's new address for him, his eyes involuntarily fell on his wife's face, making some parts of his body restless again. Qin Mian unintentionally saw it. He lifted his leg to kick Lei Tie but his foot was caught by Lei Tie's big hand, who then pinched it gently. Feeling tickled, Qin Mian shrunk away. Wife, stop making trouble. Sleep. Qin Mian turned his face away from his man and unexpectedly entered dreamland. Lei Tie patted the two little ones until they fell asleep and he took them back to the crib. He lay behind his wife and took Qin Mian into his arms. Only then did he feel at ease and contentedly closed his eyes. It was unknown whether Qin Mian was aware of it but the corners of his mouth curled up. *******. A few days later, in the early morning, the deafening sound of firecrackers woke up the small village. The sound of firecrackers lasted for half an hour. After stopping for about 2 breaths, it sounded again and mixed with the percussion sound of gongs, unceasing for a long time. Lei Xiongji passed. He obtained Yuan in the provincial examination, in other words, the 2nd place. It caused a sensation through the whole village. In private, the villagers said that Lei Daqiang and Du Shi had prayed to the Buddha a lot in their previous lives. Lei Xiongji had become the only Juren in Green Mountain Village. Based on the current situation, he was very likely to get good results in the palace examinations. At the thought of Lei Xiongji being able to obtain a Tanhua, Banyan, or Zhuangyuan in the future, the villagers could not contain their excitement. /Note: Passing the local examination earned the candidate the degree, or status, of Shenjiun, often rendered as licentiate. The next examination was taken either in the provincial capitals or the national capital and conferred the degree of Juren, literally raised person. Finally, the Juren could take examinations in the capital. If they passed those, they would become Jinshi, presented scholars. A Zhuangyuan, literal, top thesis author, the Jinshi who ranked first overall nationwide. B Banjian, literal, eyes positioned alongside, the Jinshi who ranked second overall just below Zhuangyuan. C Tanhua, literal, flower snatcher, the Jinshi ranked third overall. If outsiders were so excited, those in the old house were more so. 3 days later, Qin Mian and Lei Tie asked Uncle Fu to send Lei Xiongji 6 books in a red envelope with 10 silver taels in it. They did not attend the banquet. The palace examination was also held every 3 years. This one would be held in the 4th lunar month 2 years later, also known as the spring examination. Lei Xiongji still had plenty of time to prepare. After the excitement, Green Mountain Village ushered into the busy golden autumn season in the 10th lunar month. When the servants brought back the harvested soybeans, Qin Mian inadvertently remembered the fermented tofu he had made before, which he had forgotten. He quickly told Lei Tie to take the jar out and open it. After 2 years of fermentation, the fermented tofu was still in a neat shape. It was bright red in color and smooth in texture, and had a slightly smelly aroma but tasted soft and delicious. Its spiciness satisfied a craving. With only a piece of fermented tofu, Qin Mian ate 3 bowls of rice. His stomach was full but he wanted to eat it again. Lei Tie also liked the spicy flavor no less than his wife. Qin Mian did not let go of any business opportunities. He asked Uncle Fu to order 1,000 white porcelain jars about the size of fermented tofu jars of later generations, which were also printed with their logo and trademarks. Then, he asked people to buy back a large amount of fresh tofu and teach them how to make fermented tofu. The fermented tofu was put into beautiful white porcelain jars, each jar containing 12 pieces. After a year, they would be sold at the price of 1 tael per jar. When one had no appetite to eat, eating rice with fermented tofu was the best choice. Winter gave place to spring, bringing along another year. In the twinkling of an eye, it was the 26th year of Emperor Xiaohuai's reign. Yuan and Manman grew healthily and strongly like small saplings sprouting. 2 days later would be their first birthday. 1 year old was a small transition in the life of the two little ones. Qin Mian attached great importance to it. He started to prepare 2 days in advance and left the two little ones to their lao dai. He and the steward led the servants to bustle about together. Lei Tie sat on the soft rug in the living room with the two little ones. Yuan was very athletic. His favorite thing to do was to climb up and down his lao dai. Lei Tie supported him with a blank face so he would not fall and occasionally even helped him climb up. Manman was unwilling to be left out in the cold. He threw away his toys and crawled 2 steps toward his lao dai before he halted as if thinking of something. It seemed to find that crawling was too slow, so with 2 hands laid on the ground, he propped himself up and with exertion from his small buttocks, he stood up. He hobbled to Lei Tie with a happy smile on his small face as he called out, "Lao dai, Lao dai." Lei Tie hugged him in time and let him sit down. With a warm voice, he said, "Manman, your dai doesn't want you learn to walk too early." With his limited facial expression, bystanders might think Lei Tie was angry. However, Manman was not afraid of him. He pounced forward and stood with the help of his lao dai in a fit of giggles, climbing up his lao dai like it was a competition with his gurgur. Lei Tie took the opportunity to lie down on the rug and let the two little ones crawl up and down on him, pull his hair or pull the front of his shirts. He raised his head and looked out. It was almost noon. His wife hadn't come back. Gurgur. Manman grasped Yuan's clothes. Yuan threw a look at Manman over his shoulder and called out in deadpan, "Diddy." /note, Gurgur older brother, Diddy younger brother / Gagajet, Manman climbed to Lei Tie's chest, stretched out his chubby hands and curiously poked his lao dai's face, pinched his nose and then pulled his ears. Yuan looked at his lao dai and then looked at Manman, then he frowned. As if he wanted to stop his Diddy from bullying his lao dai but also didn't want to spoil his Diddy's fun. So, he leaned down and hugged his lao dai's face. His small soft lips gently kissed his lao dai on the cheek. Lei Tie's eyes were filled with warmth as he reached out to rub his son's small head. Qin Mian leaned against the doorframe with his arms folded across the chest and a tender smile hung on his face. Yuan talked less and Lei Tie also talked less. He had been worried that Yuan and Lei Tie would lack communication with each other. Yet, it seemed that he thought too much. The little one, Yuan, is smart. Noticing that the light at the door was partly blocked, Lei Tie raised his head to look over, his deep eyes were dyed with affection. His 17-year-old youngster had already grown tall, only half a head shorter than him. The moon-white robe appropriately outlined his slender and straight body shape, perfectly setting off the temperament of a delicate beauty. His face and neck were browned due to exposure under the sun for the paw for several days, making his whole person look healthier and more seductive, which made Lei Tie practically unable to shift his gaze. Yuan and Manman, Dai is back. Qin Mian walked over a few steps and sat on the rug. He leaned over Yuan's face to kiss him on the cheek and then kissed Manman on the cheek, too. Seeing a certain someone's eager eyes, his lips curled into a grin. With his back to Yuan and Manman, he gave a certain someone a hard kiss. Dai. Dai. Delighted, Manman crawled toward Qin Mian. Yuan, who had shown a dignified bearing at a young age, followed after Manman to crawl at a steady speed. Dai, fruity. Mian understood that the two little ones wanted to eat fruits. He picked 2 peaches from the space, giving one to LIAN. After peeling the skin, they scraped the flesh with a spoon and fed it to the babies. "Wife, how is the preparation?" Mian was about to speak when Yuan, with no expression, uttered a word, "Wife." The spoon in LIAN's hand shook and the fruit flesh on the spoon fell on the rug. After Mian was taken aback, he rolled with laughter while hammering his fist on the rug. "Ha ha ha!" LIAN silently looked at Yuan for a good while, and then pointed to Mian as he said, "He is my wife, you can't call him that." Yuan blinked his eyes as he looked at his Lao Dai for a long time before he uttered, "Oh." It was unknown whether he really understood it or not. Mian then laughed so much that he became short of breath with tears at the side of his eyes. LIAN dotingly looked at him, wiped his tears with his thumb, and patted his back. Grinning broadly, Mian also stretched out a small hand to pat Mian's back. "Dai, silly." Mian stiffened and promptly stopped his laughter. He lightly coughed and continued to feed him with a deadpan face. "Son, we can't say Dai is silly. Dai is the smartest in our family." LIAN shook his head and fed Yuan. Mian wiped the fruit flesh that dropped on the rug with a handkerchief and answered LIAN's previous question, "Everything is properly arranged. The steward will take others to deal with the rest." ******. 2 days later, Yuan and Manman's 1-year-old birthday arrived. The 2 little ones wore new clothes and looked even cuter and smarter. On their heads were baby hats in the shape of a yellow duckling, on their upper bodies were blue shirts and yellow sleeveless pullover jackets with a large blue pocket on the chest embroidered with Big Apple, on their lower bodies were a pair of blue closed-hem trousers and tiger head shoes on their feet. Mian fetched 2 similar boxes from the wardrobe, one of which was inscribed with Yuan's name, Ruki, and the other box was inscribed with Manman's name, Lei Rulan. Then, he took out 2 10-tael silver ingots and put them into the 2 boxes before locking the boxes. LIAN was puzzled. Mian patted the boxes and explained with a smile, "We'll save a sum of money for our sons every time they celebrate their birthday. When they are 10 years old, we'll give them these savings and let them learn how to manage their own money." LIAN nodded with understanding. His wife always had a lot of extraordinary ideas. Nowadays, there were more servants in leisurely farmhouse to manage and take care of things. Mian arranged the place for the banquet in leisurely farmhouse. The grove in leisurely farmhouse was restructured a year ago. A large area of open space was planted with green grass, just perfect for arranging the banquet over. Close to noon, the guests came one after another. Before eating longevity noodles, the grabbing ceremony should be carried out first. /Note: Grabbing ceremony is a custom during a child's 1-year-old celebration where a variety of articles would be placed in front of the child for them to pick from. It was said that the picked item could indicate the child's future prospects, such a writing brush, future scholar, or an abacus, future merchant, / The living room was covered with a rug. Mian and LIAN each held Yuan and Manman on the rug. Placed on the floor were a book, a brush, an ink stick, a paper, an inkstone, a stamp, an abacus, a copper coin, a silver, a scallion, a wooden sword, and more than 20 kinds of items. The guests all gathered around in curiosity. Mian squatted on one side and said to Yuan and Manman, "Yuan, Manman, choose the one you like best and give it to your Lao Dai and Dai." Yuan picked up the inkstone nearest to him, turned it over and put it down. He looked around and was attracted by the circular stamp, but he didn't take it even after looking at it for a while. His eyes rested on the wooden sword for a time before he curiously picked it up to play with. At first, Manman crawled behind his gurgler. When he saw the stamp, his eyes brightened and he quickly crawled over to pick it up. Holding it tightly, he raised his small head toward Mian and laughed, "Dai, gadget." The guests laughed as they congratulated. 2 sons, one literary talent and the other a martial talent. Ah, masters of brush and sword! Congratulations, congratulations! End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 143. You refine tools, I refine pills. Many thanks for your blessed words. Qin Mian picked up Yuan and looked at his serious appearance. He couldn't help pecking at his tender small face. The corners of Yuan's mouth raised into a little smile. He cusped his odd-eyes face and smacked a kiss on it. Not to be outdone, Manman put his arms around Lei Tie's neck and smacked a loud kiss on his cheek with a pop sound. Then he looked at his Gurgur with his small eyes with a daring look. Qin Mian and Lei Tie involuntarily looked at each other and smiled. Everyone who had witnessed this envied them without exception. Uncle Fu entertained all the guests with warmth and attention. Honored guests, please come to the banquet table. With leisurely farmhouse being so elegant, coupled with its owners and servants being so polite, the guests unconsciously put away their usual rough side and acted with elegant manners. They cupped their hands and saluted each other. Please. Please, you go first. Lei Xiongji and Lei Xiongli also helped to greet the guests. Adai, down. Yuan pointed to the ground. Qin Mian hesitated before putting him down. According to the guidebook, it was not good for children to learn to walk too early. However, since it was the child's own will, he believed it was better to follow it. Moreover, as their children were not ordinary, they could not blindly follow the guidelines in the book. As Yuan waddled forward, Qin Mian followed after him with outstretched hands, ready to support him at any time. Manman, who had been looking at his Gurgur, struggled to slip down from Lei Tie's arms. When Lei Tie put him on the ground, he got a grin from the little one with his 4 lovely little teeth the size of corn kernels on display. Then, the little one slowly walked a few steps. As if he had gained experience, his steps soon became steady. Manman excitedly trotted to Yuan and held hands with him. Qin Mian crossed his arms over his chest as he looked at the brothers with a contradictory expression of joy and worry on his face. What's wrong? Lei Tie put his arm around Qin Mian's shoulders. Qin Mian sighed, if a child can walk and run, it means that the child can also be harmed. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Yuan reach for the cup on the tea table. He quickly ran to stop him. Son, can't touch this, it's hot. Manman let go of his Gurgur's hand and grabbed a flower in the flower pot. His small hand exerted his full strength and picked the flower, then he brought it toward his mouth to stuff it in. Can't eat. Lei Tie snatched it in time. Manman looked up at him with a smile that was rather a bit cunning and turned around to go. His body was small, but his pace was very firm with his small hands clenched into fists, a posture of advancing bravely. Lei Tie slightly shook his head and kept up with him. Now he understood a little why his wife's happy expression carried a hint of worry in it. When Yuan saw his brother, he caught up in small steps. Did he? Qin Mian watched the 2 little carrots staggered forward while holding hands and their small buttocks swayed with their steps. Inwardly, he cried out, too adorable, while laughing silently. Manman turned to look at Qin Mian and Lei Tie, Lao Dai, Dai, clasp. Lei Tie cooperatively held Qin Mian's hand in his and pinched it from time to time. Shake, said Yuan. He even swung his and Manman's clasped hands back and forth to teach them. Once again, Lei Tie did as he was told. Qin Mian's head was full of black lines as he speechlessly looked at Lei Tie making such childish action with his cold and harsh manly face. Manman nodded his head in satisfaction and continued to move forward. His man seemed to be in a good mood and his 2 sons also looked very happy, so Qin Mian simply let it go. Together with Lei Tie, he swayed their clasped hands and strolled in the quiet front courtyard. Not far out, they saw Lei Chuntao, who appeared hesitant as if full of worry, under the peach tree. Lei Chuntao was half a year older than Qin Mian and will soon turn 18 years old. She was petite, beautiful, and lively. Usually, when she walked around the village, many young men secretly looked at her. Aunt Manman pulled the corner of Lei Chuntao's skirt. Lei Chuntao came back to her senses and said, "Ah! Manman is so smart to actually remember Aunt." She picked him up with care and rubbed his little head. "Aunt, called Yuan, too. Yuan, good boy." Lei Chuntao was in a dilemma, she couldn't hold two children at the same time. Lei Tie took Manman from her arms and Qin Mian also picked Yuan up. Then, Qin Mian looked at Lei Chuntao with concern, "Mei, why didn't you go to sit there?" Lei Chuntao began to speak and then hesitated. Her face was a little pale as she said in a low voice, "Father and Mother have been worrying about my affairs. Mother prefers a rich man in the town, while Father wants to betroth me to a licentiate. Generally, girls get married when they were 14 or 15 years old, and some even got married when they were 13 years old. Lei Chuntao would be 18 years old in autumn, it was somewhat late for her to get married." From her tone of speaking, she seemed unsatisfied with either of the two choices, so there might be something within it. This maiden was simple and kind. Qin Mian really regarded her as his younger sister. However, to be honest, he didn't want to involve himself with the affairs of the old house. Therefore, he could only say, "You have the best relationship with Wu Lang. If you are unhappy with something, you better have a talk with Wu Lang." After the students passed the provincial examination, the academy did not insist that they must stay in the academy. They could continue to study in the academy, or they could choose another place for self-study. Lei Xiongji had always been strict with himself. He still lived in the academy and came back once a month just like before. However, he could also come back whenever the need came up. Lei Chuntao was clever and sensible. She understood what Qin Mian was trying to say and gradually calmed down. She curtsied to Qin Mian with ease. "Thank you, eldest sister-in-law, for the advice. But, it's inconvenient for me to go out. I wonder if I could trouble eldest sister-in-law to send a message to Wu Lang in the county? I'm afraid if this matter was delayed, something else will happen." "No problem." Qin Mian nodded with a smile and immediately called a passing servant. He asked the servant to find someone who had nothing to do at present, to go to the county. Lei Chuntao looked at the servant who ran away and felt further at ease. When she thought of herself as a girl who had yet to marry taking the initiative to mention her marriage affair, she blushed. "Degur, eldest sister-in-law, then I." Qin Mian was amused. "Quickly go to have a meal. If you're late, I'm afraid you can only eat leftovers." I'm going." "Thank you, eldest sister-in-law." Lei Chuntao lifted her skirt and ran away. That afternoon, Lei Xiongji came back from the county town. A few days later, it was spread in the village that a matchmaker came to visit Lei Chuntao to match her with Huo Siryui, the son of Huo Dean of King Yun Academy. Huo Siryui was the first placer in the provincial examination at Jiuan. Like Lei Xiongji, he was likely to be the number one scholar in the future. How could Lei Daqiang and Du Shi be unwilling? Later, Lei Chuntao revealed to Qin Mian that Huo Siryui had come to her home several times. She and Huo Siryui had met several times and both of them held affection towards each other. Of course, the relationship was one of affection within etiquettes and of mutual feelings. What she didn't know was that when Dean Huo and Madame Huo found out that their son had taken a fancy to Lei Xiongji's sister, they investigated the situation of the Lei family. Madame Huo even secretly met Lei Chuntao once and liked her very much. However, she held Lei Daqiang and Du Shi in contempt, so she had been hesitating. Huo Siryui consoled her by stating that she would be taking in a daughter-in-law, not marrying off a daughter. Whatever Lei Daqiang and Du Shi's characters were, it had nothing to do with them. Only then did Madame Huo agreed and sent people to matchmaking. Lei Chuntao's wedding date was set on the 18th day of the 10th lunar month, half a month earlier than her birthday. She was still going to be 17 years old at that time of the wedding, which shouldn't sound so bad. Lei Xiongji's marriage arrangement had also been decided. With Dean Huo as the matchmaker, the bride was the daughter of Teacher Li of King Yun Academy. Teacher Li also had investigated the situation of Lei Xiongji's family. Like Madame Huo, he had not a bit of a favorable impression on Lei Daqiang and Du Shi, but he was truly reluctant to let go of Lei Xiongji, a good son-in-law candidate. He had to ask his daughter's opinion in person, and her daughter agreed. Considering his daughter's decision, she might be able to subdue the parents-in-law, so the matter was decided. Lei Xiongji's marriage date was 1 month earlier than Lei Chuntao, which was on the 28th day of the 9th lunar month. Both Lei Daqiang and Du Shi's son and daughter had found a good marriage, so they walked around the village with attitude. There was no need to go into details. In the 9th lunar month, Lei Xiongji got married. Qin Mian and Lei Tie prepared a gift, but they didn't go to the banquet and also didn't show up for the visit the new in-laws after a marriage the next day. Li Shi was a wonderful woman. On the second day after her homecoming, she visited them and gave Yuan and Manman meeting gifts. Li Shi was as efficient and capable as Wei Shi and could even be described as shrewd, quite like Wang Zifeng. Qin Mian believed that the days in the old house would become turbulent again. Note: Wang Zifeng is a villainous but talented character in Dream of the Red Mansion. A month later, Lei Chuntao got married. The wedding was far into the county town, so it was hard for the bride alone in a new place. Besides giving her 2 dowries, Qin Mian and Lei Tie also gave her 50 silver taels, which were pressed down at the bottom of the box. Lei Daqiang and Du Shi's love for this daughter was not much less than for Lei Xiongji's. Lei Chuntao was married off to Zhaoyang County in a grand fashion. After both Lei Xiongji and Lei Chuntao had gotten married, Qin Mian and Lei Tie had even less contact with the old house. The focus of their life was not only on Yuan and Manman but also on refining pills and refining tools. As Yuan and Manman turned 1 year old, it was easier for the fathers and sons to communicate with each other. The 2 children also became easier to take care of than before. Whenever the couple had a chance, they would enter the magical space. The refining room in the magical space not only collected hundreds of spiritual tools such as blades, swords, bows, crossbows, battle axes, hatchets, hooks, whips, and anything that one could think of, but also several pieces of tool formulas fused in jade bamboo strips. Meanwhile, the alchemy room had a collection of pills with various effects such as the heart-clearing pill, marrow-washing pill, soul-seizing pill, ageless pill, appearance-changing pill, and so on. In addition to these, there were tens of thousands of pill formulas, which were classified and collected in jade strips by the previous owner of the magical space. The spiritual garden was even more wonderful. There were countless kinds of spiritual grass and spiritual plants. In the magical space, the rarest 500-year-old ginseng in the secular world could only be ranked at the bottom. As to not waste the resources in the magical space, Qin Mian and Lei Tie discussed and decided that each of them choose one to learn, either refining tools or refining pills. Qin Mian chose to refine pills and Lei Tie chose to learn refining tools. The first pill that Qin Mian learned to refine was the ageless pill, which could slow down the aging process of ordinary people. After repeated trials, he managed to refine pills comparable to an inferior grade. 12 pills for 1 course of treatment with 1 pill taken monthly. After 3 courses of treatment, one could be at least 10 years younger. He and Lei Tie especially went to Deng village to give 1 course of treatment to both Old Master Deng and Old Madam Deng. The couple declared that the medicine was bought in secret at high price, lest the old man and old lady leak the news, and told them that they would be given medicine for the next 2 years. The first spiritual tool that Lei Tie had successfully refined was a protective jade pendant. When the wearer was unable to resist external attacks, such as due to being unconscious, it could automatically protect the wearer for 9 times. He gave the jade pendant to Qin Mian. Qin Mian had been wearing it around his neck. The second spiritual tool made by Lei Tie was given to his 2 sons. It was a pair of bracelets, which had the function of sensing poison. Yuan and Manman each wore one. The two little ones were still young and could not protect themselves. Wearing the bracelets could prevent them from being harmed by poisons. Being put before his sons in LIAN's heart, Qin Mian felt pleasantly sweet in his heart and a little sorry for his two sons. After he was pressed on the bed and thoroughly bullied by LIAN several times, he didn't have the mind to indulge in flights of fancy anymore. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 144. Gifted ingenious children. 2 years later. It was sunny for 2 days before it began to rain. At first, it was only a fine drizzle at the beginning, but soon it became heavy rain. Rainwater fell from the roof, like a natural bead curtain. The raindrops pitter-pattered on the green leaves, and soon there were more pools of water on the wet ground. Although it was the 3rd lunar month, it was still very cold because of the rain. Qin Mian got up and went to the bedroom to get Yuan and Manman's cotton-padded coats. The 2 boys, who were a month short of 3rd birthday, was sitting on 2 adjustable height dining chairs while leaning forward on the table as they obediently scooped rice in their small bowls to eat with spoons. They also wore a blue bib around their necks. "I can't play happily in rainy weather." Manman propped his chin and sighed like a small adult as he looked at the misty rain outside with melancholy. The corner of LIAN's mouth curled up as he wiped the steamed egg custard on the corner of Manman's mouth with a handkerchief. When Qin Mian came in with the 2 little boys' coats, he heard Manman's words and couldn't help but chuckle. A small kid also knows to sigh. Then, he heard Yuan asked, "Diddy, rainy weather has arrived, is sunny weather still far away?" Qin Mian palmed his forehead. It was his wrong. He shouldn't have replaced a storybook with an essay textbook last night. He went over and rubbed Yuan's head. "All right, you 2 little boys. If you don't eat quickly, the food will be cold." LIAN took the coats in his wife's hand. "Wife, you eat." Qin Mian saw 2 shelled salty eggs on his plate and softly laughed. Needless to say, LIAN must have helped him peel them. "Atai, have you finished eating?" LIAN took off the bibs on their sons' necks before putting on the thick coats for them, and then tied the bibs again. With his cultivation, he didn't need to eat grains anymore, but he didn't want to miss any of his wife's cooking. Manman held up his bowl with 2 hands and said in a clear and loud voice, "Lao Dai, Manman still wants to eat egg custard." "Manman is awesome today," praised LIAN promptly as he followed Qin Mian's teaching. He carried the remaining half bowl of steamed egg custard and added some to Manman's bowl until half full with a big spoon. Then, he looked at Yuan. Yuan nodded his head. "Yuan also wants." Qin Mian sat next to Yuan and picked some tender and soft leaves from the stir-fried amaranth and put them into Yuan and Manman's bowls. Their Adai said that they couldn't be picky about food. So, the 2 little boys ate the vegetables obediently. LIAN sat back on his original seat and clipped dishes for Qin Mian. "Wife, you eat. I'll do it." Qin Mian took a bite of the salted egg and the oil seeped out. Elated, he took another bite with the corners of his eyes raised into a charming smile. It's merely a salted egg with oil seeping out and he is so contented. The bottom of LIAN's heart turned into a piece of cotton. Manman smiled as he approached Yuan's ear and whispered, "Grr, Lao Dai looks at Adai in a trance." Yuan nodded, The corner of Qin Mian's mouth twitched. He said with a straight face, "Eat properly." At once, Yuan and Manman sat upright in a well-behaved manner and ate the dishes in the bowl with single-hearted devotion. After Qin Mian finished 2 salted eggs, his eyes drifted to the plate containing the salted eggs. Wordlessly, LIAN picked up one and shelled it before handing it to Qin Mian. Qin Mian received it with a smile and bit half of it. The remaining half was put into his man's mouth. When the fathers and sons had eaten well, Qin Mian wiped the boys' mouths and washed their faces and hands. LIAN put the dirty tableware in the kitchen and kept the unfinished dishes in the cupboard. Then he washed his hands, and went back to the living room. After the meal, it was playtime for their two sons. As soon as LIAN appeared, Yuan immediately ran and held his hand. "All right." Qin Mian clapped his hands. "Let's go and see if the bird ate the fruit last night." After that, he held Manman's hand. "Let's go." Manman strode forward into a run. The fathers and sons came into the corridor. On each step of the stairs, a card was posted on the corresponding railing pillars. On the card were all kinds of fruits pictures, including pears, peaches, sweet oranges, cherries, strawberries, watermelon, and so on. Yuan and Manman let go of their father's hands and ran forward. Qin Mian called them to stop in a disapproving voice. Yuan, Manman, what did I said?" Yuan and Manman halted for a moment before speaking in tandem. "Can't run after eating." Qin Mian nodded approvingly. "Excellent." The two little boys went to the stairs in a well-behaved manner and climbed up step by step with their small legs as they counted in a crisp voice. 1, 2, 3. The pigtails on the top of their heads were like two young seedlings swaying, so adorable. Qin Mian and LIAN slowly followed after them. Arriving at the room on the second floor, there were also cards of various fruits on the wooden floor. After Yuan Manman finished counting, they rushed to Qin Mian to report. "Adai, there are 22 fruits." Yuan rushed first and gave no time for his ditty. Manman was not at all offended when his gurgr rushed first. He smiled at his gurgr and turned to look at his dad, knowing that his dad would ask questions. Yuan and Manman remember how many fruits were there last night, asked Qin Mian with a smile as he squatted down. This time, Manman said it first, 30. Qin Mian motioned to LIAN to ask next. LIAN gently spoke, "A total of 30 fruits, only 22 left." "How many fruits did the bird eat?" Once again, Manman took the lead. With two small hands behind his back and head raised, he said in a somewhat proud manner, 8, oh. Manman is excellent. Qin Mian kissed once on his cheek. "Dad asks you to again, which fruits are eaten by the bird?" Manman touched his chin. Just now, he was only focused on counting. Yuan, with a calm appearance, answered, "Adai, the bird ate 2 apples, 3 strawberries, and 3 peaches." Yuan is also excellent. Qin Mian also kissed him. He was very proud. The game they played today was something he had figured out. The purpose was to let the children play indoors when the weather was bad and couldn't play outdoors. They could also learn while walking to help digestion after eating a meal. When Yuan and Manman were 1.5 years old, Qin Mian and LIAN found that they were more intelligent than ordinary children, and began to cultivate them after they turned 2 years old. The two children were excellent. The most prominent advantage of Yuan was that he was careful and observant. Meanwhile, the most prominent advantage of Manman was that he had an agile mind and quick reaction. Up to now, the 3-year-old children in other families couldn't count from 1 to 10, but Yuan and Manman could skillfully calculate addition and subtraction within 30. LIAN then took them to play. Yuan, Manman, let's put all the fruits cards into the basket." "All right, Lao Dai." On the bottom layer of the storage rack next to the wardrobe were 2 identical baskets made of bamboo in the size that could almost fit a basketball. Each basket's handle hung with either Yuan or Manman's name tags. Yuan and Manman could already recognize the characters for their names, though they couldn't write it yet. After they found their own names, they carried the baskets and picked up the cards on the floor with their small buttocks perked up. Once they had finished here, they would clean up the cards on the stair railing. Qin Mian quietly went ahead. After the two children had picked up the cards from the top to the bottom steps, Qin Mian said, "All right, sons, let's go up to put the cards away and place them in the drawer." "Yes." Yuan and Manman enthusiastically climbed up to the second floor while not realizing that their dad had cheated them. Upstairs, Mian asked the two children to sort out the picture cards and count them separately. Surprisingly, they found that several cards were missing. Of course, it's because Mian had stealthily taken the few missing pieces. He asked the children what fruits they had lost. The two babies answered it correctly. After learning mathematics, LIAN led the two little boys to practice a set of fighting techniques, arm stretching and split kick. And that concluded the aiding the digestion activity. Next, the fathers taught their children how to write. At present, they used pencils. First, they learned Arabic numerals and some simple characters such as sky, ground, wind, rain, sun, and so on. The two boys yawned after studying for less than an hour. The two fathers coaxed them to sleep and put them in the crib. Only then they had their own free time. Mian lay down lazily on the bed, a little listless. It's no wonder that Manman doesn't like rainy days, I don't like it either. We can only stay cooped up inside the house, it's very boring. LIAN watched him quietly for a long time, and then suddenly closed the curtain, which made the room darker. Mian did not understand. What are you doing? LIAN returned to the side of the bed, sat down on the edge of the bed, and raised his right hand. An orange spark suddenly appeared in his hand. Then, the spark grew bigger and gradually became round. It was like a rising sun floating upward. Finally, it stayed 2 chi away from the roof. In the room, the table, chairs, wardrobe, bookshelf, and so on cast dark shadows on the walls and floor, silent yet lively. Mian quietly looked at LIAN and smiled. Then, he sat up, rested his body on the man's back, and slowly wrote 3 words on his back with his index finger. At the last stroke, his finger was caught by a big palm. LIAN kissed the slender finger and put it into his mouth. The tip of his tongue glided up and down on the pad of the finger as he licked it. Mian felt numb all over his body, just like an electric current spreading from his fingertips to his whole body. He dodged. No, what if the children wake up? With a wave of LIAN's left hand, the curtain hanging in the middle of the room slowly unfolded into a cloth wall, separating the crib and the big bed into 2 small worlds. LIAN made this curtain the next day when Yuan and Manman saw by chance Mian and LIAN being intimate. Every time Mian saw it, he involuntarily recalled that scene and glared at LIAN fiercely, but it had no heat in it. That was because he was also looking forward to this. A flash of a smile seemed to have passed by in LIAN's eyes. Mian became angry. He exerted a force, pressed the man under his body, and triumphantly looked at him, given or not. LIAN touched his face, softly called him silly, and fiercely kissed him. Outside the window, the rain babbled and the wind was as cold as winter. Inside the house, however, was a scene of spring. Worried that they would wake up Yuan and Manman, Mian didn't dare to make a sound. Therefore, his 5 senses seemed to be 10 times sensitive than usual. When he was at the peak, he bit LIAN's shoulder, but he was still unable to suppress it as he let out a muffled yet provocative whimper. LIAN hugged Mian tightly, his shoulders sank as he achieved physical and mental connection with Mian. Feeling weak and tender, Mian lay on his man's body with his head rubbing against his neck and his cheek plastered on his skin. The sun above disappeared at an unknown time. Mian pulled up the quilt to cover them both and mumbled, "It's too dark. Don't scare the children." LIAN exerted his spiritual energy to make the curtain slide to one side. His hands returned into the quilt and caressed the place he liked to fondle admiringly. "Wife." Answered Mian lazily with his eyes closed. "After our son's 3-year-old birthday, our family is going to the capital for a month," said LIAN. Mian suddenly raised his head, looked at him in surprise, and happily counted the days. "Great! The boy's birthday is on the 10th day of the 4th month, which is a warm spring day. It takes more than half a month to go to the capital and then visit the capital for a month, so when we come back, the weather won't be too hot. Perfect. Also, this is our family's first trip together. Lei Tie propped up Qin Mian's chin, kissed his lips and put his wife back in his arms. Sleep while the children aren't awake. He remembered that his wife planned to continue to expand the family business when the children reached the age of 3, so there would be fewer opportunities for them to go out and play in the future. Hence, now was a good time. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 145. The family of 4 goes to travel. There were many things to be arranged before leaving for a trip. Most of the employees in the winery and vermicelli workshop were from the village. Apart from emphasizing confidentiality, there was nothing else that needed special attention. Eating savory restaurant and the bakery were arranged as per usual. Only Double Siang House required Qin Mian's meticulous arrangements. In the past 3 years, Double Siang House had hardly introduced any new dishes because it had held activities almost once a month, such as a poem recitation contest, lottery drawing, collecting all kinds of cards for prizes, storytelling contest, and fruit picking competition. All kinds of new activities emerged one after another. The business of Double Siang House had not deteriorated at all but had become more and more prosperous. This trip would at least take 2 months, so in case there was any mishap in the business, there was none in the family that could take charge. Therefore, Qin Mian told manager Soon that while he and Lei Tie were away, Double Siang House would no longer host any activities for the time being and that security would have to be the main focus. Lei Tie only planned to take Lei Qin Lei, Lei Qin Zhong and Lei Qin Shun with them. As for the remaining 7 armed servants, he arranged for 2 to stay in leisurely farmhouse and 5 to oversee Double Siang House. The news of the Qin Mian family's trip to the capital soon spread. Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui came over when they heard the news. In the 3rd lunar month, peach blossoms were in full bloom. The peach blossoms clustered together, woven into a pink cloud tree. It was a peaceful sunny day and the spring breeze was gentle. Lei Tie was leading Yuan and Manman to practice boxing under the peach tree with Dian Bai and Jin Simo P following and wobbling along as they joined in the fun. A round table with 2 large armchairs and 2 small armchairs were placed under the peach tree not far away. On the table were a tea set, a basket of apples and 2 plates of snacks. Qin Mian was leaning forward on the table as he wrote and drew. Next to the round table, there was a rug and some toys scattered. It was unknown when a big and red apple tumbled on the ground. As the spring breeze gently blew, a few peach petals fluttered in a carefree and leisurely manner. Clench your left hand and push forward, instructed Lei Tie with a demonstration. Yuan and Manman looked very serious. Their left legs were straightened while the right legs squatted into a horse stance, arms were raised, and small hands clenched into fists, which suddenly punched forward with a tender shout came out of their mouths. Stand straight, change to your right fist. Spin and strike again. Qin Mian watched the big one and 2 small ones with a smile. Only after a good while did he withdraw his gaze and continued to write in the planning book. When Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui looked at the warm and lively scene of the family of 4, they could hardly bear to approach and disturb the family. The manservant came to report to Qin Mian, reporting to Little Master. 5th Young Master and Young Master Huo are here. Qin Mian beckoned Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui. You 2 came. Right now, Huo Sirui's identity was no longer as Lei Xiangji's schoolmate but Lei Tie's younger brother-in-law. He came to Qin Mian and bowed with his hands folded in front. This Sirui greets eldest sister-in-law. Eldest sister-in-law. Lei Xiangji also greeted him. Lei Tie brought Yuan and Manman to come over. Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui saluted again, Degur. The 2 little boys, with sweat all over their faces, cupped their fists and bowed down solemnly to salute. Yuan greets 5th uncle and uncle-in-law. Manman greets 5th uncle and uncle-in-law. Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui were amused and both laughed. Qin Mian picked up handkerchiefs and wiped Yuan and Manman's sweat. Yuan and Manman are truly good boys. Huo Sirui took out 2 round colored stones in the size of sweet orange from his sleeve pocket and handed each to Yuan and Manman. These are the stones that uncle-in-law picked up by the riverbank while strolling outside. They aren't worth anything, only precious in nature and fascinating. This is for the 2 of you. Yuan and Manman looked at Lei Tie. Lei Tie nodded as he perceived that the stones were indeed ordinary. Thank you, uncle-in-law. Yuan and Manman took off their shoes and went to play on the rug at the side. Dian Bai rubbed its solace on the footpad and jumped on the rug, rolling the stones with its snout as it played with the boys. Jin Simo P lazily tramped at the side. It huffed and puffed, which blew away the petals floating in front of it. After pouring 2 cups of tea, the manservant brought 2 chairs and retreated to the side. Qin Mian casually motioned for Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui to sit down. As he served the 2 with cups of tea, he asked Huo Sirui, "It's rare for you to come here, why didn't you bring Mei Mei, too?" After Lei Chuntao married Huo Sirui, she gave birth to a daughter, whose childhood name was Dang Dang. Huo Sirui was fine with it, but both Dean Huo and Madame Huo were disappointed. Dean Huo had always dreamed of having a little grandson whom he could teach. As for Madame Huo, she also wanted a grandson the most. However, perhaps it was because Lei Chuntao had seen many conflicts between a mother-in-law and daughters-in-law in her home before she got married, she subtly learned a lot. After a while, she got along with Madame Huo like a biological mother and daughter. Even Dean Huo also changed his attitude toward her. Owing to Lei Chuntao taking good care of her parents-in-law, Huo Shirui naturally loved her more. Now, the whole family got by in a joyous and harmonious relationship. In Green Mountain Village, the villagers who knew about it secretly envied Lei Chuntao's marriage. Huo Sirui and Lei Xiangji looked at each other before Huo Sirui said, "Eldest sister-in-law, Dagur, actually, Wugur and myself came here to ask for something, so we didn't bring our wives over." Oh! Thinking of the coming spring examination, Qin Mian vaguely guessed something. As expected, Lei Xiangji said, "Eldest sister-in-law, Sirui and myself will participate in the spring examination on the 4th month this year. However, the capital city is quite far. Perhaps, it will take nearly 20 days to arrive by carriage. Both of us are very worried about encountering mishaps on the way. If we miss the examination date by an unforeseen event, the 10 years of studying hard will fall short of completion." Huo Sirui was somewhat embarrassed as he continued, "I heard that Dagur and eldest sister-in-law are going to take Yuan and Manman to visit the capital. We want to ask if you can start ahead of time and go with us. Eldest brother and eldest sister-in-law are both highly skilled in martial arts. If the 2 of you accompany us, Wugur and myself can be at ease." Lei Tie looked at Qin Mian in silence. Qin Mian was in a bit of a quandary. If they had to hurry up for the examination date, they had to set out at the end of the 3rd lunar month at the latest. It rained a lot in the 3rd month, and to be honest, it was a pleasure to journey on rainy days from time to time. His and Lei Tie's original intention for this trip was to bring Yuan and Manman to have fun. If they were confined in the carriage all the way, where was the fun in that? Besides, if they set out ahead of time, Yuan and Manman would not be able to celebrate their birthdays at home. Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui didn't know that both Yuan and Manman carried a spiritual tool that could warm up the wearer's body, so they thought that Qin Mian was concerned about Yuan and Manman's health. The spring in the 3rd lunar month was chilly and the children could easily get sick on a long-distance trip. The 2 men dared not urge them and quietly waited for Qin Mian's decision. They both knew that they were imposing on the other party, but they were truly afraid of mishaps on the road. If the 10 years of studying hard were hindered at the last step, how could one be reconciled? Qin Mian thought about it for a while and put himself in Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui's situation and found that he sympathized with them. Then, he slightly nodded to Lei Tie. Lei Tie perceived Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui's wrong presumption. He pinched Qin Mian's shoulder and pondered for a moment, set out as soon as possible. In case the weather is too cold, stay somewhere temporarily for a few days. Qin Mian was a little puzzled. After thinking about it, he understood why his man said it like this. He nodded with a smile, all right. Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui looked happy. Both men stood up and bowed with their fists cupped in the other hands to Qin Mian and Lei Tie, feeling embarrassed. We've troubled Deger and eldest sister-in-law. Not only that, but we've also wronged Yuan and Manman as their birthday won't be celebrated at home. We really feel bad about it. Yuan and Manman thought the adults were calling them, so they turned their heads and looked over. However, they didn't get any response. They shrugged their shoulders like little adults and continued to play. Qin Mian waved his hand and said, "It's fine. One can celebrate their birthday anywhere." Lei Tie lightly spoke, "You two go back to prepare. Is it all right to set out in 5 days?" "No problem." Lei Xiangji looked at Huo Sirui. Huo Sirui responded, "I also have no problem with that. If you have friends who are also going to the capital to take the exam, you can invite them to go together. But it's better not to have too many people. Tie and I dislike too much noise." Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui were very happy when they heard that and thanked the couple again. Eldest sister-in-law can rest assured that there are only Chu Zongwen, Buletin Qingyun, and Zhao Tianhe. Yourself and Deger already knew them. Qin Mian nodded. "Well then, we are going." After Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui left, Qin Mian and Lei Tie went busy. Qin Mian went to arrange the family business. Lei Tie was responsible for packing up the clothing and other articles for daily use of their family of 4. Many things could be put in the magical space, but on the surface, everything that should be prepared should not be missing, lest it aroused suspicion. Lei Xiangji and Huo Sirui were very considerate. The next day, Huo Sirui had people sent a brand new cotton-padded jacket to Yuan and Manman respectively. Meanwhile, Lei Xiangji's wife, Li Shi, gave Yuan and Manman each a soft hat, on which there was a small animal that warded off evil spirits embroidered by Li Shi herself. One could see that she was very thoughtful. 4 days later, the sky was clear and the spring sun was warm. 2 carriages drove out of leisurely farmhouse. At the front was a double carriage driven by Lei Qin Mian, Lei Tie, Yuan, Manman, and even Dian Bai were all on that carriage. The poor Jin Simo P.'s body was too large that for this trip to the capital, it had to stay behind and guard the house. Lei Qinzhong and Lei Qinshun rode on horsebacks, and behind them was another double carriage driven by a manservant, carrying the entourage's baggage and other items. The carriages stopped at the gate of the old house. After Lei Xiangji bid farewell to his parents, wife, and child, he got on the first carriage with his baggage on his back. Huo Sirui's family had a carriage. When they got to the county, he would ride with Huo Sirui. The villagers who cared about Lei Xiangji stood at the entrance of the village and watched the carriages go away. Yuan and Manman liked to sit on a carriage. They leaned on the window as they watched the village gradually disappear in the distance. Lei Tie held the boys in each of his powerful arms. With their Lao Dai holding them, Yuan and Manman felt very safe and not afraid at all. From time to time, their hands and heads stretched out of the window. The 2 little boys were obviously excited as they kept chattering. "Grr, look, there are many birds on the trees." End chapter.